Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Always Compete podcast. I am Sam. That is Mike DeFran, and today we are going to be kicking off our 5-part draft series where we'll be breaking down the 5 biggest needs for the Seahawks and the 3 best players at that position, or the best players at that position that we believe will be available at our pick and what fits our needs. And we're going to be talking about that. Today, we'll be breaking down the tackles. We are going to be doing both right and left tackle today, considering the fact that both of our tackles are on are on the last year of their deals, especially Dwayne Brown, who's 36. It might be his last year in the league. We don't know where that's going to go. So we are going to be kind of basing our projections on Sports Illustrated. .com. They put up a whole draft coverage thing, and we will be using that as a reference today. So real quick, Mike, do you have anything that you want to say about the tackles before we kind of hop into this?
Yeah, I think it's more likely that we pick up a guy who played right tackle because I think that's a bigger need for this upcoming season. But again, looking at both sides of the tackles, we could always draft a guy who played left tackle, put him at right tackle. And additionally, our tackles, both Dwayne Brown and Brandon Shell, have a history with injuries. So it might be nice to just pick an offensive tackle and then we can put him at either spot, if we have some injuries on the offensive line. So that's kind of why we're starting with the offensive tackles today. And if we pick a guy at right tackle, he could play some left. If we pick a guy at left, he could play some right. So they could definitely flip around a little bit.
And quick disclaimer, if you hear us say that like so-and-so is above Penei Sewell on our list, it's because we're going based off our draft position. So we're not just because it would be boring just to say Penei Sewell number 1, Rashawn Slater number 2, yeah, Christian Darrisaw number 3. We're going based off our position, and we will be breaking that down. So I say let's hop right into the left tackles here. I have the page pulled up. Obviously, there's the 3 main guys projected to go in the first round. Penei Sewell, obviously the stud out of Oregon. Just a total franchise left tackle waiting to happen. Super athletic.
Yeah. No chance. Yeah.
He's a top 10 player. Darrisaw, a top 20 player, and Samuel Cosme, likely a late first round pick out of Texas. And then we kind of get into the second round here, where we are starting to see some of the players who might be able to fall to the Seahawks. I immediately look at a guy who I've been a fan of for a long time, and it is Spencer Brown out of Northern Iowa. Now, you guys may have never heard of this guy. Hell, you may have never heard of Northern Iowa. I really only know it's because David Johnson went there. But Spencer Brown he went to the Senior Bowl. And, I mean, he did pretty decent at the Senior Bowl. Didn't do anything insane. But I'm really into him because of his size. I'm going to read you his size.
I'm reading it right now. Wow.
Yeah, you're reading it right now, right? 6'9", 311 pounds. Mike, Sheesh. Go ahead and just give your thoughts on this dude, not necessarily because of his play, just because of his overall potential in this league.
I think his potential is fantastic. You look at a guy who's probably a round 2 talent at 6'9", 311. That's an absolute monster. Number one. So if his only bright side is his size, that's still a very, very high bright side. But I also like the fact that he's very strong. If we look at his bench, he's benching 500 pounds almost. So, I mean, this guy, he's huge. He's strong. He's going to bully people. Might not be the most athletic dude in the world, but we can work on his feet. I think that this is a great pick in round 2 if he can come to us. And, man, I am just loving that 6'9", 311 frame. It's like if you were to build a left tackle, or if you were to build a tackle at all, you want that size. It's like the size you put on when you make your character in Madden. So yeah. I absolutely love that size.
Yeah. I mean, he's a big, big, big man. And I mean, ultimately what I think about this is that he's a guy who doesn't need to start right away, and that kind of fits perfectly with what we need. I mean, it's probably no matter who we draft, Dwayne Brown and Brandon Shell will likely be the 2 starters at tackle this year, but are both on 1-year deals. So, I mean, it would be perfect for Spencer Brown, who has flexibility at both tackle positions, may I add. Just let him learn from Dwayne Brown. Let him find Dwayne Brown, and he'll be like, yo, this is how you fire off the snap. This is how you do so-and-so. This is how you do so-and-so move. This is how you counter it. Another thing that I'm really looking at, obviously, arm length is a huge deal with tackles. He has 34-inch arms, which is
Wow.
almost 3 feet long for those who don't want to do the math on their own.
Yeah.
3 feet long with a 82-inch wingspan. So this dude was like Jesus was in his bag when this dude came on earth. He was in his bag. He's like, let me see what I can do with this one.
He was pulling some Game 6 Jordan action right there.
Yeah, bro, that's insane. I don't know if we've ever seen a player built like this in the NFL before. I mean, guys have had a wingspan, but might be 6'5". I mean, this dude's 6'9". This dude could play starting power forward in the NBA.
Yeah, I was about to say that too.
Like,
yeah,
that's insane. I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty sure the tallest player in NFL history was like 6'11". This dude's two inches shorter than that. I mean, you obviously bring up the questions about his athleticism, which definitely is a concern. You know, with a big frame, you're guaranteed likely not to be super athletic. But I mean, I just think that the overall potential here, if he can fall to 56, it might be a move that Pete might have to be like, hang on, John, let's not trade back for a second. I don't know. Let's pull up the YouTube highlights of this kid real quick. Let me see what he's all about.
I want to see a picture on draft day of him standing next to Russell Wilson. Like he's like almost a foot, like literally almost a foot taller than Russell Wilson. I need to see that picture. It'll be like the Mark Ingram picture, or not the Mark Ingram, the Derrick Henry picture with Deion Lewis, who's he's like a half a foot taller than.
Yeah.
Absolutely awesome. I love it.
He's also 3 feet taller than Kyler Murray. So, I mean, it would just be a very menacing thing to see from the other sideline. It's great.
That's a good
great.
one.
It's great.
3 feet taller.
3 feet. All right. But next up, I also look at another small school dude who I've had my eye on for a long time. Dylan Radins, also a second-round projected pick out of North Dakota. I mean, once again, I think that this dude has more immediate starting potential than Spencer Brown, honestly, but overall, still a very, very quality prospect. I mean, a guy who is built pretty well as well. I mean, he's a guy, obviously the concern with these small school tackles is who have they played? Because obviously if you have a guy in the NFC West, he's going to come in and play against Aaron Donald. He's going to play against Chandler Jones. He's going to play against J.J. Watt. He's going to play against Leonard Floyd. He's going to play against Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead. I mean, all these guys are like elite names at the defensive line position. So, I mean, you're taking a look here at these guys. I mean, you got to question, is the talent level similar enough to the point where he could potentially just step in and make a move? He's essentially 6'6" at 6'3", weighs in about 301 pounds with 33.25-inch arms. He's very talented. He's versatile. What do you think? What do you think about this dude?
I mean, he was a great left tackle for North Dakota State. Obviously, Trey Lance is going to go very high in this draft, and he was a quality, dependable left tackle for him. I think that he's a guy that you could put at left or right tackle. He doesn't have a huge size that we were mentioning with our last guy, but I think his size is good. I mean, I'm not going to complain. He's 6'6", so I'm like, that's nothing wrong with that. I think personally, he's not a guy who can come in and start week one. I think he's a guy we have to learn some technique. He's going to have to catch up to the pace of the NFL. I think he'll be a guy that's going to benefit very much from preseason. Throw him in the preseason, have him show us what he can do. I think that this is a guy that you don't take in the second round. If he's there at round 3, maybe. If you really like him, then you could probably trade back in the second round and get him early 3, maybe mid 3. I would not take this guy in the second round just because his size isn't as good as some of the other tackle prospects. And again, like you said, with the competition, we don't know really. He hasn't gone against anybody truly elite, played for North Dakota State. They don't have a lot of guys going to the NFL. They don't have a lot of opponents going to the NFL. So I wouldn't draft this guy in the second round, but I don't hate him as like a 3rd or 4th round pick as an offensive tackle, in my opinion.
Yeah, we brought up questions about his kind of competitiveness. Reading about his Senior Bowl performance, it says he had a shaky start to the week on day 1, and then by the end of the week, he was one of the best guys there. So that's kind of what you want to see, a guy who's going to grow. Obviously, he's going to struggle, because he's coming in. after playing against, a guy who maybe was a one-star recruit coming out of high school to a guy who was recruited as a five-star to Alabama or something like that. So he's
Right.
obviously going to struggle on day one, but he picked it up, which is a good sign. It shows that he can adjust and develop, which is always what you want to look for in a rookie tackle. So
Right.
I ultimately agree with you. I don't know. I'm not super confident with this pick in the second round, but if he were a guy who you trade back to, like, who you may trade back 15 spots with to get another couple picks, maybe if he slips that far, maybe then you kind of sit there and say, well, we could have our future Dwayne Brown guy right here on the board after we got a couple picks after trading back. So that's something where I could definitely see this happening. And my third favorite here is we brought up a guy who, Dylan Radins and Spencer Brown, both obviously out of North Dakota State and Northern Iowa, both clearly do not have great, competition. This dude is the total opposite. Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama, left tackle and right tackle. Mike is an Alabama fan. I'm gonna hand it off to him to listen because I don't watch a lot of college football. I do watch tape during the draft, but obviously this dude watches Alabama football. I'm gonna ask him what he thinks.
So, if you know anything about Alabama last year, I mean, they were just absolutely stacked. And part of the reason that they're absolutely stacked and how their offense was so good is because their running backs and Mac Jones had all day. I mean, it was like it was like Moses in the Red Sea back there. Just the sea split and they could walk right through it. And a big reason for that was Alex Leatherwood. Now, Alex Leatherwood is listed at 6'6", 312 pounds. That's good size. Really like that size. The other very positive thing about Alex Leatherwood, two that I can think of right off the bat. Number one, he's flexible. He can play left tackle. He can play right tackle. So like we were saying earlier, we could flip him around however it fits. The other thing is that Alex Leatherwood dominated against dudes who are going to be in the NFL. Not many players were being blocked by the two previous guys that we were mentioning are going to the NFL. There's legitimately a really good amount of players that are going to the NFL that Alex Leatherwood dominated. So right off the bat, he's better than some NFL competition. I'll say that he was a dependable left tackle for Tua. I believe actually he played right tackle when Tua was there because Jedrick Willis was the left tackle, and then this past season he played left tackle for Mac Jones. He is just big. He's dominant. He didn't in 2019 and in 2020. He's not a guy who's like a Penei Sewell, who's like, okay, that guy is like a top 10 pick. Not one of those guys. I think, though, he's a really solid tackle. I think he's a guy that you can plug in and play, day one if need be, because he's played against that NFL talent and he's as prepared as he really could be going into the NFL. Obviously, he was coached by Nick Saban, which very much helps. I really like Alex Leatherwood as a pick. I believe he's projected as a round 2 or 3 guy. We kind of have a pick in the late second. If he's there, I consider taking him. But if he's there in the third round, I would most definitely take him. If we trade back or something, I would most definitely consider taking Alex Leatherwood. Dominated against SEC, can play both sides. Really didn't have too many problems with injuries. I think he's got good footwork, good movement, and I would really love him in the third round.
Yeah. I look at it here. Obviously, you talk about the competition. That's really the main thing for me. You got to love the SEC offensive linemen. Every year, they just manage to crank out one or two really, really good guys who just excel. I mean, you look at last year, Jedrick Wills went 10th overall, and he was a stud out of the gate. Yep. I mean, Andrew Thomas had a rough start coming out of Georgia, but then really excelled in the second half of the year. They just have a knack of pumping out really quality offensive linemen because of who they play against. These guys are constantly playing against three, usually 4+ star prospects. So, it's a big thing.
And another thing I'll even remind about Alex Leatherwood is that he played right tackle the year that Tua was in Alabama. And so he was protecting Tua's blind side. Tua's a lefty, man. He was protecting Tua's blind side. So he was typically you think of the left tackle as the blind side protector because you have normally right-handed quarterbacks. But Tua's a lefty, man. He was protecting Tua's blind side. And Tua last year, and Mac this year, they didn't get touched all year. So, I mean, Alex Leatherwood has done his job, and he's done his job very well. So I definitely like Alex Leatherwood as a prospect.
Yeah, me too. Obviously, I'd probably rank if you were to rank the three guys that we just mentioned, I would probably say Leatherwood. Like as to who I'd be the most comfortable picking at 56, I'd probably say Leatherwood one just because of the competition, Spencer Brown two because of the potential, and Radens at three because he's kind of a mix of both. He's
Mhm.
obviously played against better competition than Spencer Brown, but he's obviously less potential than Spencer Brown at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think Spencer Brown, the big thing with him is his frame. So, you can't coach 6'9", 311. You can't do it.
Yeah.
That's a guy who you can really – I think he's more of a project. We talk about this with quarterbacks a lot, prospect versus project. I think he's a project, a guy who we train and we let cook in the oven for a little bit. But, man, there's something about that 6'9", 311 frame that really gets me fired up to have Spencer Brown. I would agree with you in terms of order. Who I would feel the most safe with would be Alex Leatherwood. Then I would go Spencer Brown, almost purely based off of the frame and the strength. And then I would go Dylan because I am not huge on Dylan, me personally.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So now we're going to move on to the right tackles. Far less right tackles in this year's draft than left tackles. Automatically, the first guy that I'm looking at on this board, Liam Eichenberg, the redshirt senior coming out of Notre Dame, a stud right tackle who, and I mean, we want to talk about schools who managed to crank out offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Notre Dame, like Quentin Nelson. I remember when Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey both went in the top 10. Like that's just how they crank out offensive linemen, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it so well, but they just have a knack. So
Right.
give me your thoughts on Eichenberg, because I mean, honestly, he's probably one of my favorite tackle prospects for the Seahawks in the entire draft.
Well, so if we look at Eichenberg, right, 6'5", he's 302. He's got 32 and a third-inch arms, which is pretty big. So, again, we talk about that size. Size is big. Size is big when you're going against guys like Nick Bosa, when you're going against guys like J.J. Watt, all those guys that are in our division. I'm seeing that he's being compared to Justin Pugh, which is, he's been a pretty solid guard throughout the majority of his career. He says his strengths, he was a 3-year starter at Notre Dame. He learned under Quentin Nelson and Ronnie Stanley, which are two of the absolute best offensive linemen in our league today. They said that he strikes with force on first contact. Again, that impact block is very important, especially at the tackle positions. Prevents those edge rushers from murdering your quarterback. He's well-schooled working with hip-to-hip on double teams, so he's able to double team guys, which is something that we really need to work on the Seahawks. Talk about competition. I mean, Notre Dame, they're a big school. They've played some big guys. People forget they beat Clemson this year. So he's definitely got the competition. He's definitely gone against NFL talented players. And, learning under guys like Mike McGlinchey, Quentin Nelson, Ronnie Stanley, I mean, those are some of the best offensive linemen in our league. And Notre Dame is known for, and they've been known for a long time, for pushing out quality offensive linemen. I'd pull the trigger on him personally. I would prefer to have him in round 3, but it looks like his grade is probably a mid-second. So if he's there in the second round, I wouldn't be mad at taking him. But I also understand if you don't want to take him. I really like this guy, to be honest.
Yeah, this is just a really, really solid player. I mean, you mentioned 6'6", 302. He learned under guys like Quentin Nelson, Ronnie Stanley, who, like you said, are just two. Honestly, I would do a lot to get Ronnie Stanley or Quentin Nelson on the Seahawks. I would they are that good. Like Ronnie Stanley is the best left tackle in the NFL. He got hurt last year. But still, in my opinion, he's the best left tackle in the NFL. In Lamar Jackson's MVP year, he didn't allow one quarterback hit all year long at left tackle.
He's definitely one or maybe two of the best offensive tackles or left tackles in the NFL. Absolutely.
Yeah. But like mentioning it, Eichenberg has the flexibility. He can play right. He can play left. One of the big things that I see is he has some trouble with the speed rushers, and because they say that he doesn't sink far enough and he can't really keep up when you're not sinking with those speed rushers. So that might be a slight concern, but once again, he doesn't need to start day one. You could gladly sit him behind Dwayne Brown or Brandon Shell, who are both pretty decent. Dwayne Brown's an elite left tackle in my opinion, and Shell's a pretty solid right tackle in the NFL. And then you have Mike Solari, who's a pretty above average O-line coach. It's because, I mean, he doesn't affect how the offensive line plays really at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So you guys might be complaining, but Solari's a pretty good offensive line coach. He has a lot of experience. Sit a guy like him under those three people, and you have a pretty solid young prospect that you can build right off of the bat, and a guy who you could really mold into a potentially elite left or right tackle in the NFL.
Right.
So, we're obviously both pretty high on Eichenberg, a guy who you should definitely watch out for, just at for the Seahawks if he's available. If he's available at 56 or even in a trade back, which is possible.
Yeah. I don't know if I would take him at 56, because I think at that time there would be more talented guys on the board. But like you said, we trade back or something like that. I think that's a situation where we could probably take him, but I don't know if I would take him at 56, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I feel you. Obviously you kind of want to focus on guys who, can kind of play right out of the bat. That's
Right.
kind of what you want to focus on at 56. So I do understand where you're coming from there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm kind of looking around at Notre Dame offensive linemen who've come into the NFL. Another guy who we forgot to mention is Zach Martin.
Oh yeah,
Another
really
guy
good.
who,
Really, really good.
I mean, all these guys, very quality. They have a good history, which is another reason, honestly. I mean, it has to be some good coaches there or something
Yeah.
that can pump out these players so quickly. So obviously a guy to keep your eyes on for Seattle. Next up at right tackles, I'm looking at a guy, not a super deep right tackle class this year. A guy who I have had my eyes on for a little bit now, Dan Moore, the right tackle out of Texas A&M. Maybe a guy who could be on the board who isn't necessarily a second round prospect. He might be a guy who might be available in the 5th or even potentially the 7th. But Dan Moore, once again, we talk about that SEC thing, man. The SEC, man.
When you play in the SEC and you're an offensive lineman, you go against guys who are legitimately going to the NFL. He played against a couple guys in Alabama and LSU last year that are going to go high in the draft. And he seems like he did a very good job, size-wise, listed at 6'6", 309. He's got 33 and 3/4-inch arms, long arms, tall, 309. Good size, honestly. He's got good size for a tackle. Just looking at his strengths really quick. Again, 3-year starter at Texas A&M, a school that plays Bama, LSU, a lot of those SEC schools, Florida. They've got some guys who are going to go. They say his strengths are his pass protection movements are athletic, which is, again, very important because we're going against very athletic edge rushers, Nick Bosa, J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, etc. He's got good patience against pass rush counters. He's got an adequate recovery anchor against the bull rush, which is a move that is, requires strength, obviously. He's got quality ability as a cut blocker, which is good. Runs feet to secure wash down blocks on outside zone. I would say he's more so of a guy who we don't run outside of the tackles a lot. Seahawks like to run inside of the tackles. Short off quality second level adjustments, which is big because a lot of those big runs that you have when you get your running back to the second level, they require blocks down the field. So obviously those are some things that are very important. I like this guy, good size, played in the SEC, 3-year starter. His prospect grade is a 5.86, which is a pretty good. He's a backup right off the bat. Again, he doesn't have to start right away. Solid guy. Would not take him in the 2nd round. I would take him in the 4th round, potentially. See if he's still there. But what do you think about Dan Moore?
Dan Moore is a very interesting player because obviously you mentioned the fact that he doesn't need to play right away, which is a key thing for any tackle coming to the Seahawks because we have a guy like Dwayne Brown who is very experienced and could be a potential, I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry. But Dwayne Brown, who could be on the Seahawks for a little bit longer than just this next contract. That's kind of the thing.
Right.
So at the end of the day, if we end up picking a guy like Dan Moore in the whatever it is, 5th, 6th, 7th round, wherever you think he should go, if he's on the board, he might not ever play. But at the end of the day, you can look at it like this: potential upside, starter for us later in the year or later in his career, or just a good backup for 4 years.
Right.
That's kind of what you're looking at here, especially tackles tend to be very injury prone. Very few tackles play all 16 games, which is kind of weird because you'd expect them to be those guys who are super durable and can take the hits. Not a lot of tackles play all 16 games, soon to be 17 games. So I'm sure that
Yeah.
number even dipped down even more. But I like Moore enough to the point where I would push for him in the 5th round. I wouldn't be like, I'll be cool with Dan Moore. I would be like, Dan Moore's on the board. He played in the SEC, a 3-year starter who measured well.
Mm-hmm.
Just take the shot, take the
Yeah.
shot. A very quality
Yeah.
player and a guy who I think could have upside in the future as a potential Dwayne Brown or Brandon Shell replacement.
My only issue with taking Dan Moore in like the 5th round or something is he's not going to start this year. Barring an injury, he's not going to start this year. And being that we only have 3 picks, I'm kind of looking for those guys that have potential to start, early in the season. And I don't think Dan Moore's that guy, but I can't argue with the upside and the potential for him to be a great player, down the line. 5th round is probably where we're going to start seeing his name brought up for the Seahawks. I don't know if I would take him that high. I would probably take a DB in 5th round because obviously we have a very good history taking DBs late in the draft. That's probably where I would go, but I wouldn't hate it if we took him in the 5th round, and that's kind of my thing on Dan Moore Jr.
Yeah. Now, for our third prospect, we're going to be moving to a guy who blocked both sides of the likely number 2 pick, Zach Wilson. We're going to be talking about BYU left tackle / right tackle, Brady Christensen. Now, this is a guy who really wasn't considered a high player going into this year, but I think the fact that he blocked both sides of what is likely to be the number 2 pick in Zach Wilson to the Jets, I think that was a big factor in him shooting up draft boards. And now I've seen a lot of varying things on him. Like Sports Illustrated has him as a 7th round player, but I've seen mock drafts where he's gone end of 1st round. So like this is like a wide. It depends really what you think. Do you think that Zach Wilson excelled because of this guy, or do you think that maybe he got propelled off of Zach Wilson's kind of breakout year? I like him personally. He's 6'5", 300, so not a massive player by any means. But I look at some of these like draft reviews. Nice sized pass blocking left tackle with good mobility, fundamentally sound with a wide base, keeps his feet moving and anchors in pass protection. Like, isn't that kind of what we need at this point?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we struggle in pass pro very often. We could probably have the 5 best offensive linemen in the NFL at all 5 positions, and we would probably give up still around 30 to 40 sacks a year, just because it kind of seems like the Seahawks are cursed that way. But I mean, when you look at this, you got to think Russell Wilson would be happy just reading these positives in his game. So, Mike, what do you think about Brady Christensen? Are you a guy who thinks he is a player who could be picked at 56, or is he a guy who could be picked at 250?
So I wouldn't take him at 56. Reading kind of his draft profile, they say he has short arms for tackle. That's not something I really like. Not a great bender, and is an average athlete. And when you're especially in the NFC West, and more specifically just in the NFL in general, when you're going against those great athletes at edge rusher, you kind of want to be very athletic. He's got a hard time redirecting his weight. He oversteps and gets beat inside, and we absolutely cannot have that. Like we've mentioned before, getting beat inside is terrible because when you get beat outside, you can maybe step up a little bit. Getting beat inside is the worst, and that's what killed us against the Rams, all those inside upfront pressure against Russell Wilson. So I definitely would not want this guy at 56. But if he's on the board in like the 7th round, and you said there's a big variant with him, so I'm not even going to begin to predict where I think he's going to go. But if he's in the 7th round, I would take a look at him for sure. Again, played at BYU, not great competition. Had a superstar quarterback behind him. He's 6'5", 302, which is like average size, nothing great. I mean, this guy is like he could be a good backup, but I don't know if he's got the traits to be, a stud tackle. So I would look at him in the 7th round, but no guarantees. I would really take him in the 7th round if we're being honest.
Yeah, once again, you talk about it. A guy who definitely has his ups and downs, which you can't really have as a tackle, especially as a starting tackle, maybe as a backup tackle. If your ups are high enough, then maybe it's worth picking him somewhat early, like a 4th, 5th round pick. But
Yeah,
if your ups and downs are consistent, like you'll have 3 plays where you'll completely stonewall Chandler Jones, and people be like, "Hey, look at Brady Christensen," and then the next 5 plays you give up inside and outside pressure on Russell Wilson, and he gets sacked once and throws the ball away 4 times.
right.
You can't
I
have that. And players like that tend to not make it very far as starters and backups. That
right,
kind of consistency is a very good trait to have, and it's almost a needed trait, especially for starting tackles.
right. And you mentioned kind of, I mean, everybody coming in, every rookie is going to have flaws. I mean, even, Trevor Lawrence, who's as close to a perfect prospect as I've ever seen, has flaws in his game. So everybody's got to have flaws. But a couple things that you look for is, are those flaws, can you coach him out of those? Number one. Number two, does he have other traits that really pop out to you that kind of help you ignore the other flaws? And looking at Brady, he doesn't have any traits that really jump out to me. And it's like, ooh, I like that, with guys like Alex Leatherwood. Oh, he played in the SEC. You really like that. You talk about guys like Sam. Oh, he's 6'9", 311. You really like that. Nothing about Brady that you really say, oh, that's amazing. We want a guy like that on our team. And then you look at some of his negatives in there. Isn't athletic, short arms, gets beat inside. I don't know. Those are very concerning things for me. In my opinion, this is not a great prospect. It's great as a 6.19, which is higher than I thought it would have been. But you know what? If he's a stud, he's a stud. And again, it's a 7th round pick, and typically you don't get much production from those guys. So might as well shoot for the moon, pick a guy who could be great. I'd look at him in the 7th round, but before that, I'm really not going to look at Brady Christensen too much.
Yeah, once again, you talk about how you kind of look at players to say, well, are their flaws able to be coached out? You talk about Alex Leatherwood, maybe he has some issues with keeping his feet moving and stuff like that.
Hmm.
You can coach that.
Yeah,
Throw him in, drills on the side of practice in OTAs and have him do footwork drills all day, and then have him do one-on-ones against NFL talent. Maybe that'll help his footwork.
right.
Spencer Brown, just get him acclimated to the NFL.
Yeah,
He obviously the competition is the main thing. Get him acclimated. Let him slowly push him in. Slowly push him in. And even with a guy like Dan Moore, they say that, he doesn't always, or like Eichenberg, they say he doesn't bend far enough. That was his main, that
right,
was his main knock. He doesn't bend far enough. You can teach a guy to bend far enough. It's not hard. Just say, put your butt down 6 extra inches when you're blocking, and you'll be
right,
a perfect blocker. Like when it's like he overextends consistently, he can't put he can't put a string of really quality plays together a whole lot.
yeah,
Can you coach those out? You might be able to coach out overextending, but are you able to coach out consistency?
right,
Consistency is a main thing that really
right.
it's kind of weird, but it's kind of genetic. It's a
Yeah,
genetic thing. You're born as a consistent player, or you're not born as a consistent player. So
yeah,
we're gonna see about Brady Christensen. Like I said, like you said, maybe a 7th round pick. Maybe if you trade back into the late 5th round or early 6th round, maybe you take a peek at this guy. But at the end of the day, if you were to rank these prospects, I'm going to rank them in the exact way that we talked about them. I'm going Eichenberg, Moore, and Christensen,
yep,
because all 3 players, Eichenberg obviously has serious upside as a starting tackle in the NFL.
right.
Dan Moore has some upside as a starting tackle in the NFL. And then Christensen is like, if you really coach him really well, he might be a decent tackle.
Right.
Like, that's kind of what you're looking at here. So overall, I
Yeah.
think that's going to wrap it up for this
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. One more thing about Christensen. I think out of all of the linemen we've talked about today, he's got the best haircut. So whatever that does, do with that information what you will.
Maybe
But
Pete Carroll likes his haircuts. Maybe. I mean,
man, I don't know, man. I like some of the
it's worth it's worth checking out if the haircut's like really really good. Like
for sure.
if it's like an
For
A+ haircut, it might be like a first round bump up on the draft.
Exactly. I mean, why do you think Trevor Lawrence is going number 1 overall? He's got the best hair in the whole draft.
Well,
I mean, is that
like,
a
Zach
cool?
Wilson? Have you seen Zach Wilson's hair?
Yeah, but dude, come on. Trevor's got that flow, man. Trevor's got the flow. He looks nice with it.
Trevor's got the flow. That's the only reason why he's going number 1.
I'm a Bama fan saying that Trevor's got nice flow. So, I mean, you kind of know that it's pretty nice when even I have to admit it.
Yeah.
But
all right. But I think that's going to wrap this one up. This is the first episode of our 5-part series where we'll be talking about all the needs for the Seahawks in the draft and where they might fit in. Next episode, we'll be breaking down the wide receiver 3s, and we'll be giving you 5 potential wide receiver 3s for where the Seahawks might be picking. And I think that's going to wrap it up. Thank y'all for listening. Stay tuned. More episodes and videos on the way. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see y'all next time. Peace out.
See ya.